I'm Aggie. Welcome to Intro to Computer Science. Today we're going to be discussing a very important part of how computers work, and it's called memory. Human memory is very similar to how computer memory works because computer memory was modeled after human memory. So human memory, for the first step, needs an input. It could be a handshake, it could be somebody saying hello. A lot of things could be inputs. We also have short-term memory. It's things that are happening right now, and we're remembering that this is what's happening right now. And we also have long-term memory. Long-term memory are things that we can pull out from years ago that we remember. We have all sorts of input. Let's just say somebody named Jim comes up to you, extends his hand, and says hello. You got a lot of input just by that little bit of interaction. You have the visual image of Jim. That is a visual input. You have the sound of his voice saying hello. That's an audio input. You have his hand extended. You're going to reach out for it, touch it, and you're going to shake it. The shaking motion is a kinesthetic input or a muscle input. And then the feeling of his hand is a tactile input or a feeling input. And if he's wearing cologne, you have a smelling input too. So lots of input just by somebody saying hello to you. And when he says hello, you're going to put that information into short-term memory. And as you speak to Jim, you're going to remember it's Jim that you're speaking to. Now, if all goes well, Jim, his name, his visual image will go into your long-term memory. Some people have great hearing memory, and they will remember the sound of your voice. Say a week after you meet Jim, you see him again on the street, guess what? You're going to recognize him. You're going to say, "Hey, Jim, how are you?" And you're going to have a conversation with him, and you're going to put Jim's name and everything else back into short-term memory so that as you are speaking to Jim, you will remember that it's Jim you are speaking to. So how does computers do this? Well, it gets input also. For those of you who like to video chat, or if you go on Skype, WhatsApp, all those applications, they require a camera. So a camera for the computer is a visual input. Microphone. Some of you are gamers and you're recording your games and you're talking into some kind of recording device so that you can broadcast your gaming results. That microphone is an audio input. A mouse. You're using the mouse to play games, you're using the mouse to draw things on some kind of graphics program. That mouse is an input. But for the most part, the input comes from a keyboard. We're typing Word documents, we're typing emails, we're typing all sorts of things. And that keyboard is a really big portion of how we input things into the computer. Once the computer gets this input from all these external devices, a camera, a microphone, a keyboard, what it's going to do is going to take all that information and send it inside the computer, and this is what the inside of a computer looks like, and it's going to be stored in three really important places. So the first thing is RAM. It's like a long stick, it's usually green, and it fits in the palm of your hand, it's a little bit long. And that's the computer's short-term memory. Then we have permanent storage. For short, we just call it a hard drive. There is a difference between a hard drive and a solid-state drive. A hard drive has moving parts to it. So when you're accessing information from permanent storage, which is the long-term memory, there's the mechanical parts to it moving. A solid-state drive has no mechanical parts. It's usually more expensive. So most people have hard drives and not solid-state drives. But for this show, we're going to call it either permanent storage or hard drive. Then there's the processor, which is the brain of the computer. We call it CPU, which stands for Central Processing Unit. But for the purposes of what we're doing, we're just going to call it the processor. So let's talk about word processing. Let's talk about opening up Google Docs, Microsoft Word, and in this case, TED, which is a free rich text processor. As you're typing all these letters, the reason why you can see it on your monitor is because the computer is holding everything into short-term memory, RAM. All those letters you're typing, it's going in here. That's why you can see it, and that's why you can delete things and go back and do all sorts of things and shuffle it around. It's because it's being held in short-term memory. Short-term memory, or RAM, is located as little slots, if you will, inside the computer. In this computer here, it's down here. Let's go back to the word processor, and we're going to do something very common. We're going to hit save. Once you hit save, that information goes into the permanent storage or the hard drive. And if you look inside the computer, you're going to see that metal box inside. This is not my computer, so I actually don't know what's inside of this thing. I am guessing the hard drive is one of these two. There's three of them, 1, 2, 3. But I'm guessing it's one of these two, or perhaps there's two hard drives in this computer. Now let's just say you have a whole bunch of things open. You have a word processor, you have Minesweeper, this is Solitaire, you have your file folder directory, and you got a command prompt. You got everything open. So what the computer does is, like, when it starts realizing, hey, you're kind of maxing out on the short-term memory, I don't think I can hold anymore, it does something very unusual. It starts accessing virtual memory. And this is when the processor, the CPU, kicks in and does one of its functions. It has a section called the MMU, which is the Memory Management Unit, and it's going to take the stuff from short-term memory, it's going to take it out of the RAM, and it's going to put it into your hard drive. There's another kind of memory, and this is called memory cache. So this is a very old processor. It's called the Pentium 2. I'm using it because I showed my students what this thing looks like. We have a spare one in the classroom, so I took it out and I showed it to everybody. And because it's nice and simple, it's easy for me to explain things. So if you open it up, this is what it looks like. In the processor, there are little circuits that will keep track of data. And that kind of memory is called L1 cache. Now, right next to the processor itself, on the same circuit or on the same board, there's these two sections here, these two chips here. That is L2 cache. Now, the reason why there's an L1 cache and an L2 cache is that the faster the CPU or the processor needs something, the more likely it wants to put it in here, here, or on the chip itself, or on the processor itself. And when that happens, they can access things much faster and much more efficiently. So as an example, you're in some kind of browser, Safari, IE, Chrome, Firefox, whatever, and you're surfing the net, and there's data that Chrome or your browser needs, and that data, because it's accessed so frequently, it doesn't want to put it out in RAM for short term. It's going to use these two things for short-term memory. I hope you enjoyed our very brief description of how memory works in computers, and I hope to see you next time.